All right, so I'm going to go ahead and broadcast the results here, and we'll kind of get started with our poll. As we mentioned, we had a little bit of technical difficulties, but now we're up and running. My name is Kellyanne LeConte, and I'm the Professional Development Manager at the Space Science Institute with the StarNet project.
I'm Annie Holland. I'm the Community Engagement Manager at that same place.
I'm Jamie Harold. I'm the hand behind the cameras. Hello.
He's the one that made that awful noise earlier. It was not us.
Thanks, Jamie, for helping us.
I meant that.
All right. So, Ian, would you like me to pull down that poll or for the slides, or did you want to talk about the results?
Yeah, just really quickly. Obviously, I meant to put up this poll a little bit later, but we did it early since we had some technical difficulties. I just wanted to know how you guys were already interacting with your communities to gain feedback about the programs you offer in your library. And specifically, feedback from people who don't already frequent your library. So it looks like quite a few of you actually have already done this kind of thing, and the rest of you absolutely think you should, which is what I would expect since you're at this webinar. But actually very surprised to see how many people have already done this, so that's fantastic.
So we wanted to just give you a couple of slides to update you on just some general information from the Star Library Network. So we are going to be providing webinars such as this. We have a couple more coming up before the busy summer season, and we'll be back up and running again with some additional webinars in August. We also have plenty of resources for you to tap into in between your busy schedule, so please check out our blogs, forums, videos, and of course a lot of hands-on activities that are available through our clearinghouse. So up next, as I mentioned, we've got a couple webinars coming up. So next is if I can say those words, Libraries Helping Girls Steam Ahead with NASA. That'll be next Wednesday. We also love for you to join us on June 6th for a Universe of NASA Resources. So lots of good information to help you with your programs coming up. We also are very excited to be heading to ALA. So myself and Anne and Jamie, as well as Brooks Mitchell and our colleague Sarah Post, will all be at the NASA booth. That's number 1839. We got lots of Hyperwall talks and swag, and we're going to have a great time. So come see us if you're going to be there. If not, we'll be passing along what we learn online. We also have 3 sessions that will be coming up at that conference, and if you're there, please do come visit us, heckle us, and otherwise join in the fun. And as I mentioned, we do have a STEM activity clearinghouse where we have many activities. We have over 150 activities, and best of all, this is a place where you can add your own review after you try one of these activities and just post what worked for you, what didn't. Just your comments of how that activity worked, especially given that we're looking specifically for things that work well in the library setting. So give us your feedback and let the world know what progress you're making with those activities. So there's also a new feature on that clearinghouse that we just introduced. In general, most of those clearinghouse activities do have really inexpensive supplies, sort of the thing you can get at Walmart or an other inexpensive sort of store, but we also would like to acknowledge that there's many fun things you can do if you've got the budget to buy something, say like an infrared thermometer, which is not very pricey at all, but super fun. And we just wanted to note those on the clearinghouse so you can find them or filter to avoid those if you don't have the budget. Either way, just help you with your planning. So check out that highlighted section of STEM tools, whether they're optional or required for the activity.
Great. Thank you so much, Kelly. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So thank you for joining us at our Community Dialogue webinar. You may have noticed Brooks is not sitting here right now. He's not with us today. So we'll don't let him know that we had those technical difficulties. Just let him know everything went perfectly fine. So I'm going to be starting off presenting today, kind of explaining to you guys what a community dialogue is and why we think it would be really beneficial for your organization to do one. Zachary Steer is also on the line with us. He is one of our esteemed librarians from our NASA at My Library program. He conducted a community dialogue at his library that was absolutely fantastic. So he's going to talk a little bit about his experience and what they're going to do now that they've done this dialogue and got all this great information. And then after Zach, I'm going to come back and let you guys know about some resources we've recently developed for you to help you do your own dialogue if you have not done one in the past already. So first off, the big question, what the heck is a community dialogue? A lot of people think, oh, it's like a focus group, and that's almost there. So you can think of it like a focus group, but instead of testing a particular product, what you're actually doing is gauging your community's opinions on your library and the services that your community thinks your library should be doing that they might not already have. It's a very loosely facilitated discussion. It's not like one of these webinars where someone is sitting in front of you telling you the information. You're really getting a whole lot of back and forth, and the idea really is for the community to do 99% of the talking, and you, our library staff, as the facilitator, are really there to take notes and listen. It's a really good opportunity for library staff and community members also to discuss a common community-based challenge or aspiration. So for our projects, we've done these community dialogues in our Discover Health program. That was a health science exhibit. NASA at My Library, which is exactly what it sounds like. And our Project Build program, which is an engineering program. So all of our dialogues have really had a bit of a STEM focus to them. How can we get your community to be more involved and invested in STEM? But it doesn't have to be like that. It could be, how do we get more underserved audience members into our library? How do we get more funding into our library? You can really do these for whatever is kind of the big challenge that you're trying to, overcome in your library. Lisa Jackson, who's participated in a couple of our StarNet programs actually, said a really nice thing about these dialogues, so I wanted to share that quote with you. I'm assuming you can all read it, but I'll read it just in case because it's a little small. Lisa said, there's no doubt that the community dialogues are beneficial to all parties. I think this method should be employed more often when we are considering all kinds of services, initiatives, and programs for our community. I'll talk to you a little bit later about how this whole community dialogue idea started, but it was really nice to hear words like that from Lisa and so many other librarians who really did see the benefit of this. And even though it's something, we do focus groups all the time. We do it, libraries do it. Taking it the step further to really try to get the people who aren't your frequent flyers, as I like to say, has really, we think, made a difference. Oops, helps if I hit the right button. There you go. So on those frequent flyers, you know how they use the library, right? You've got your favorite, we can't say that, some pre-K kids you really like that come into your library. You know what books they want. You know which programs their moms do, and that's great. But what you're really trying to look at with these community dialogues is what about the people who don't already come through that front door? Are there services they use that they don't know about? Is there some reason they don't feel welcome? So it's really about kind of opening your ears and opening your minds to, I don't want to say complaints, but maybe just, oh, I didn't know the library did this. I didn't know libraries were even still a thing. Whatever it is that might be stopping your community from walking in the door. But even beyond that, it's also an opportunity to make new partners and further cement your library as a community hub. This is absolutely huge. A lot of the community dialogues that we've been doing, we helped our participants have some ready-baked partners, people in the communities that were going to be there for them, that would help them through this process, and would be kind of a stepping stone to taking the next step with the library. But we've also done these dialogues with people that we did not kind of have a ready-made partner with them, and they have those partners now. This is a really great way. What I hear a lot, especially from STEM community members, is the library doesn't need my help. I looked at their event list, look at all the things they have going on, what could I possibly do? So you need to reach out to them and say, hey, I do need your help. Please come and talk to us. Please, let's see how we can work together. And it'll go very quickly beyond, oh, this one person from this organization is helping me, to having a real organizational partnership with that other entity, which is fantastic, and we love that we're starting to see actual evidence of this moving in. It's not just the idea in our heads anymore. So what do these things look like? They're about 1 to 4 hours. That's the most common question. How long do I need to do this for? It is really up to you. We've seen community dialogues that are only an hour and a half, and I have participated in ones that lasted all day, and the janitors kicked us out of the building. So it's really what you're up for, what your community's up for, and what you want to build into it. Like, there's no reason to say that you would have to sit there and have a 4-hour-long discussion and not do anything else. Have a STEM party, do some hands-on activities, order pizza, right? All those things might change the time, so don't feel like, this is a loose guide, remember, don't feel like you're locked in to any one thing. Excuse me, also very important is that the participants represent the community that you live in. Again, that sounds very obvious, but I hear often that, oh, you know, the patrons that I have here, maybe they're white, upper class, or maybe the right, but you want to make sure that the people walking into this dialogue match the people walking out along on the street. If your population has a large Native Hawaiian, Native American population, but everyone who came to your dialogue is a professor at the university, that's not what you want. You want to make sure that representatives from those other groups show up too. Also very important, don't forget though the people that you already know. If you're friends with those professors, great, bring them all in. Just make sure you have a great mix of people you already know, people you don't know, and importantly, people you want to know and you want to be involved in your library. Zach's going to talk about this in a few minutes, but you also want to invite the change makers. Take a risk. You know, if there's people that aren't sure what the value of your library is, bring them in and tell them about it. Show them. Have some programs going on at the same time as the dialogue. It's all well and good to talk about the things that you wish you could do to increase your patronage, but unless there's people in the room that can make those things happen, then it is just talk. So you have to be a little bold with who you're inviting to these things. Most important, they need to look relevant for the groups you're working with. If you're having a community dialogue that's talking about how do I bring, well, we'll use Project Build as an example, how do I bring engineering into my library, and the people in your community have other problems, other issues that are stopping them from thinking about their STEM education, you have to talk about those issues first. Maybe you can talk about them together. But think about it. You're not going to get parents or community members coming to talk about your cool STEM programs at the library if they're more worried about the street's not safe enough for kids to walk to the library, right? You have to address those challenges that might be stopping people from already coming to see you. And guys, if you have any questions, I know this is kind of a lofty up there kind of thing. If you have any questions, please do type them in the chat box, and we can stop and answer them. So I just wanted to share this quote with you really quick before we talk about what our goals at SSI were for these community dialogues. And this quote is from someone who's done a community dialogue, full disclosure there. It's from a Discover NASA, one of our exhibits, host site librarian. So she said, public libraries are a pillar of education for all. We have an opportunity and a responsibility to offer educational experiences for our communities. STEM learning is part of this and highly important for the continued development and health of our society, both intellectually and economically. I really loved that quote, and you feel free to steal it in promotion for your community dialogues if you want. I think it does a really good job of addressing what I was just talking about, where you have to look at where the community already is and where you want them to be. You can't just look at these things in isolation from each other. Looking at where they're already at and where STEM or whatever else you want to talk about can take them is really important to have a really an honest discussion that moves you forward. Excuse me. So our goals for the community dialogue, so again, these are our up here goals, are that we strengthen librarians' roles in establishing a STEM learning environment. We all know that libraries do STEM. We have 8,000 libraries on our community of practice, our online community, that tell us they do STEM all the time, but we want other people to know that, right? Helping libraries to identify underrepresented community groups is huge for us. We all know that you know who it is that either doesn't walk in your door or who walks in your door and doesn't use the library to the full extent. Very often we hear, yes, this X group walks into a library, they check out books or they use the internet, but they don't really do programs. So how can we make those programs or other opportunities more relevant for those groups? Number 3 here, and this is really important because I don't want you to have to do this yourself, is identifying possible collaborations and partnerships within your community. Zach's going to talk to you in a few minutes here about all the great people that he invited. We also have a list of possible people to invite on our website that will show you where you can get that information at the end. But, you want the people that you want to work with. That should be, schools are up there, local governments up there. But think outside the box. If there's a sandwich shop down the street that you want to be friends with, great. Invite the sandwich shop. It's really who you think in your community is a change maker. And I make the joke about the sandwich shop, but one of our libraries did that. They invited the sandwich shop because it was really the only counter service type of shop in town, and people gathered there and people talked, and now they kind of cross-promote each other, so it's great. So what might work for one community might not work for you, but, Starbucks, whatever. And then lastly, and again, this is, for us, one of our high-level goals, is continued contributions to developing a really flexible community dialogue model that all libraries can use. We're focused on STEM here because that's our funding. We do NSF and NASA, and yes, STEM, yay. But again, there's no reason you can't use this very, very flexible model to talk about other issues in your community, and we encourage you to do that. So, ground rules of these dialogues. So again, Zach's going to tell you in a minute about his awesome community dialogue, and I think he did a really good job of following these rules. And I'm going to say rules in quotes because these things are super flexible. You do what you need to do, but these are our suggestions. Number one is have a kitchen table conversation. You don't want to sit up in front of people reading off a slide, which is totally what I'm doing right now. You don't want to do that, right? You want everyone to feel like they have the opportunity to ask questions, to participate. You want to make sure that one person isn't dominating the conversation. Call on other people, make them participate. They're there because they want to give you their information. Even if they're being quiet, it's totally okay to call on them. Number two here is that there are no right answers. This was a problem. One of the early community dialogues I helped facilitate, so my problem, is we really knew what we wanted people to be talking about, and we really knew what we thought the answer for the community was, and they didn't agree with us. So it was really, it took some deep thinking, right? We had to pull back and realize, no, we'll let the conversation go where it needs to go. Sure, they don't agree with us. We think we're right, but they don't. Why is it that they don't think we're right? Even if you know 100% that you're right, if you're not doing a good job at convincing those people, what's the issue, right? Number three, keep an open mind. Same idea. Listen carefully. Try really hard to understand the views of the people who might be disagreeing with you. Even if you're not going to have that kumbaya moment at the end where you all agree on everything, you can learn something from that person over there who you disagree on every single aspect of life, but where's that place that you converge and try to work from there? Four, as a facilitator, and I am bad at this, you need to help keep the discussion on track. And you need to encourage the participants to keep the discussion on track. Encouraging them not to ramble, say it nicer. But, if people start going off on a tangent, I was just actually at a program at my daughter's school, and the principal was so good. We had a speaker. It was a ninja warrior. It was very exciting. And the kids all started raising their hands saying, I went on this obstacle course, and I did this. And the principal said, let's try to stick to questions instead of stories. And he just phrased it in such a nice way that the kids didn't feel attacked for telling their stories, but they all took that and rephrased it like, oh, I did this course at blah, blah, blah. Have you ever done that kind of thing? So, being good facilitators and encouraging people to get back on track without telling them to be quiet, right? Number five, this one's huge. It's totally okay to disagree. Just don't be disagreeable. Respond to others how you want to be responded to. Many of our libraries, and Zach will tell you, I'm not sure if he did this or not, many of our libraries actually took these rules, printed them really big and put them up on the wall or at people's spots, and mostly it's for this one. You're going to disagree. You're a big, huge community with lots of different perspectives, and that's totally fine. You don't need to be a jerk to the person who's disagreeing with you. There's no need to yell. From the library perspective, realize that people might be having a fight, but they're having a fight because they really, really care about what you guys are there to talk about. This is a good thing. We're not expecting everyone to come to these dialogues and agree. Frankly, if they did, I don't think that's a very productive dialogue. And then number six, the most important one, have fun. Again, this is for the facilitators and for the participants. Do a hands-on activity, make some comments, do some Legos or whatever you need to do to get people excited. Having kind of an icebreaker, which all the adults are going to think is super silly, where they do a fun hands-on activity, make some slime, I don't care. It'll get them talking and more willing to participate in the conversation. Have some backup activities. If you get to a lull in the conversation and people aren't really participating and you think you're losing people, it's late, they haven't had their coffee, one, give them coffee. That would be great. Two, give them another quick activity to do. There's no reason this has to be like a stodgy focus group where everyone's in lab coats writing down notes. That's not it at all. It's a party. So, Zach, I promise we'll get to you in just a second. I just have a lot to say. So how we got started with this model, it actually started with our Discover Health program. Again, that was a health science exhibition, and they were for me. The community dialogues weren't for the library. They were to help me develop exhibits and programming. I wanted to know what each of these communities thought was a relevant health issue in their region so that I could write an exhibit about it. That was a great idea, and it worked really well, and people really like that the exhibits are tailored to them. But what we realized when we were having these discussions is, oh, look, all the librarians and all the health educators that are at these discussions, they're taking even more serious notes than I am. Maybe they could use this too. It sounds obvious now. Of course they could use it, but that wasn't our initial plan. So initially when we did these, we invited library staff and then area health education center partners. So those were our, like I mentioned earlier, our baked-in partners for this particular program. And that was really the only people we invited. Some people invited other library staff or other health educators, but it was really, here's our two partners, sit together, tell Annie what we're doing. As we got towards the end of the dialogues and we got to later versions of it, they started inviting other people, community leaders. They started talking with each other. The first groups that did the dialogue called other people and said, don't listen to Annie, invite all these other people and make sure you have a note taker. These are so useful. So all of that kind of feedback we got from them about how useful this model was is why we took it a step further. The step it should have been to begin with, but you have to forgive us for not realizing it to begin with. So some of the key outcomes we got, and again, these were the community dialogue light. We get much more exciting later on. They had new partnerships with organizations like Immigration Services, Heritage and Cultural Centers, tribal libraries, and the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. This particular exhibit was it's thundering here. This particular exhibit was a bilingual health science exhibit, so bilingual English-Spanish. So obviously all of our partners were really interested in getting the Spanish speakers in their community to use their library to the fullest extent. And all of these new partners have really helped them do that. We're very, very proud of our libraries kind of making all these new relationships. Two of our libraries completely changed their signage on their front doors. Something we heard from some of the Spanish speakers that came to the dialogues is, yeah, we obviously all speak English. We've been here for a while, but when the signs are all just in English, it makes us feel like it's not for us because we might come in and speak Spanish and maybe you don't like that. So some of the libraries changed so that they had bilingual signage, just even in their welcome sign on their door, and that's made a difference. And another library completely changed the display that was sending the wrong message to their target population. And I'm going to share this story because some of you might be doing it too, and it was just a really good takeaway. They were really interested in getting Spanish speakers to come in for story time. So they set up a whole area that was Spanish language children's books, but the sign above it said Spanish language storybooks in English. So the Spanish speakers thought, oh, those aren't for us. Those are for the white people who want to learn Spanish. Those are their books. And that was not at all the library's intent at all. And now they've added Spanish signage, not just there, but all over the entire library. And in the brief amount of time between that first conversation and when I just actually visited them a couple months ago, you can actually see a pretty big difference in how people are using that library, which I think is absolutely fantastic. So really quick, I think this is the last slide, and then we'll go to Zach. So Zach, get ready. So we feel, and we hope that you will agree with us, and Zach's going to tell us how this worked out for him. We really think that community dialogues can help your library by expanding your understanding about patrons' feelings about your library and its programs. For us, particularly STEM, but you can use this however you want. We also think that you can obtain meaningful feedback from the community on who visits the library and why. You might not even realize that there's a population segment who is not walking in your door. The census can only tell you so much. Not everyone gets counted in the census. So hearing from other community members about who they know isn't coming to see you is very valuable. Also really good conversations we've heard about how library can better serve ethnically, economically, and geographically underserved and underrepresented audiences, a lot of time you're the only place within miles and miles for some maybe rural mountain community, and they don't come and see you, but maybe you could come and see them every once in a while. Knowing that there's a need has been a really big outcome from these dialogues. And lastly, we've mentioned this a little bit already, better connecting with local organizations and potential future partners who have a shared interest with you in your community. And again, and I'm not just saying this, there are really, I've heard so many times, the library doesn't need me. Again, this is the opportunity to show, yes, we do need you, we want you, and it's not just about the library, it's the community needs both of us. And if we're working together on a shared goal, we're going to accomplish a lot more that way. So very important, and something I haven't talked about too much yet. Make sure you're not just focusing on the library, right? Yes, it's all going to help the library, but it's the community. How are we working together for our community as well? So I think if I counted slides correctly, oops, I'm broken. There we go. So I'm now going to pass it off to Zach. Again, Zach Steer is one of our esteemed NASA at My Library partners who conducted a community dialogue. And Zach, I just love that you used your quote in the title, because when he told us about all the amazing things he was doing in his dialogue, that's what he said, go big or go home. And he really did it. So Zach, I think it looks like you're already unmuted. You can go ahead and take it away.
I just want to make sure everybody can hear me okay.
Yeah, yes, we can, Zach.
Alrighty, great. So, as Ann mentioned, my name is Zach Steer, and I'm the head of Children's Services at Erickson Public Library in Boone, Iowa. And I'm just going to go ahead and share with you my awesome experience with the community dialogue.
Zach, we lost you, it sounds like, unless everyone else disagrees with me.
It's interesting, his mic still shows.
Yeah.
Back.
We heard you for a second.
For those of you looking for our video to move, Ann and I just paused it so that we can continue smiling, but also grab a drink of water. And the challenges on our end, Zach, I think we'll just give you a moment here to work through maybe just reconnecting your audio to see if that might fix the problem. We still don't see your mic, Zach, on your next to your name, so it looks like you either got kicked out or have to rejoin or need to run through maybe the audio setup wizard. I promise everyone this worked great this morning. Of course.
Again, right? Don't tell Brooks. He trusted us.
It looks like Zach has had to drop off, unfortunately, and then come back on. So for this time, I'll look for Zach's name in here. I'm going to make the camera go here again. And it'd be great just to hear from all of you. Do you have some thoughts about this so far? Like we kind of got a little bit of your mind on it.
Yeah.
So is there any feedback or thoughts for Ann? Or questions for each other? Ideas?
Yeah, and guys, this is a evolving model. We are constantly changing things and adding new information. So if you heard anything you're like, yeah, no, I don't think so, that's very helpful information, actually. Or if you think we've missed anything, we're just trying to make something that's helpful for everybody.
Back.
Eric, that's a really good question, and I bet Zach is going to talk about it when he gets back on here. I'm going to show you guys at the end of the presentation some places where you can go find some of this information, but the short answer is plan ahead. Start talking about it 5 or 6 months in advance. You just have to keep people excited.
Right.
So, Zach, are you reconnected? It doesn't look like it quite yet.
Zach, welcome back. Thank you for bearing with the technical glitches on your end. So it looks like you need another moment on your mic.
Make sure it's not muted because it will default to mute. Right, once we
Yeah, we saw that mic come up for a moment there.
Absolutely, Umair. You can host a community dialogue whenever you want. I know you're specifically asking about our other program, but yes, that's totally fine. Yeah, Elena makes a really good point. Formal letters are great, but knocking on people's doors with an ice cream cone in your hand is really good too.
I definitely answer for an ice cream cone, Anne.
Terry, that's a really good question. Hopefully some other library staff answer in the box for you too. But we definitely encourage surveys, Facebook, SurveyMonkey, that kind of thing, to get information from your patrons, and we would hope that you're doing that all the time anyway. The big difference between those kinds of things and what we're talking about here is those surveys tend to only be filled out by people who are already using your library, and we're really hoping to expand the knowledge base to people who might not already be using it. But yeah, you don't have to have this big, huge conversation to get good information. You're absolutely right. Oh yeah, Elena, I knew I was remembering somebody did that. Elena says that they start with the conversation and then go to a survey for fine-tuning. That's a really good point. You don't want, we'll talk about this a little more later, but I'll do it now too. You don't want 100 people in the room for the community dialogue, right? You're not going to be able to have an honest discussion that way. But if you get the conversation started and then take that information and put it out into a survey for a wider audience, that's a really good way to kind of confirm what you talked about in that dialogue. Thank you, Elena. Elena's had to do a few of these now.
Yes, thank you, Elena.
I mean, got to do, chose to do.
Way to go, Elena.
Hey, Zach. Oh, I just put that to everyone, not just to you. Zach, I just put my cell number down in the box. If you could call my cell, we're just going to hold you up to the microphone, and that'll work just fine. Yeah, Eric, that's a good question. In my head, 5 to 15 or 20, anything more than that. And it's really hard to get a good conversation. Everybody call Annie! You can text me funny memes now. Okay. All right, Zach, let's see if this works.
Yep.
Hey,
Okay.
turn him up. Are you on speaker mode? Yeah. Go for it, Zach.
All right, guys. I'm so sorry for the lack of microphone here, but I'll go ahead and speak as loud as I can, so hopefully everybody can hear me. So I'm going to go ahead. Let's just go back here. Setting the stage. So I started my community dialogue prep in September of 2017, and I launched it in February of 2018 of this year. So it took about 2 months for me to begin the marketing and get everything set up.
getting all the partners in line. So the first step for me was, oh good, people can hear me, that's exciting. Okay. The first step was review, and so this was mentioned earlier in this presentation, but the Community Dialogue Information Packet was an excellent resource and is an excellent resource to refer to. It provides a great layout and information as well as a great time table to allow us to get the community dialogue planned and then executed. And then I felt it was important to go back to the library mission. There's always times where I want to ensure that what we are planning for and what we want aligns with our mission. But it's also important to look at our current long-range goals or your current long-range goals. And so one of those in particular for us is to continue with community outreach. And so far, I would say in our lineup, for community our size of about a little over 12,000, we have about 50 to 60 different partners, both local and state. And we continue to add more, seems like every week. And so I'm going to go over some of those specific partners that we tapped into. But yeah, the long-range goals provided me an understanding because we're about to end the 5-year long-range goals for this set. And so I wanted to use this community dialogue to help us prepare for the next 5 years because STEM will, of course, be on that docket. So step 2 for me was gather. And as I said, wanted to gather a current list of local, county, and state partners. We have anywhere from the state library, top medical folks. We have folks from education, early childhood, middle school, high school, after-school programs. But as Ann said, we also have those community partners that are not necessarily in a professional arena like libraries or education. We tapped into local restaurants, car dealerships, anybody that has some sort of related field. For example, in STEM, because we found that the word STEM can make some individuals scared that it's going to be too educational or too much educational jargon. So we wanted to ensure that our partner list was or is including folks that are not necessarily in a education or library field, because we want to ensure our partner list is as inclusive as possible. And then the step 3 is seek out. So begin researching new partners to invite. So for me, as I said in my title of this presentation, Go Big or Go Home, I never believe in a ceiling or a limit for the amount of partners that we should have, and nor do I feel that we should ever have a moment where we say, okay, we're going to take a break from searching for these partners and let's deal with the list that we have now. So partnerships, in my opinion, are something that you actively seek and take. I think it's important as a one person doing youth programs in a size town like this. I still want to find time to do the research and finding partners, whether it be related to the NASS at My Library program or just related in general. How can we continue to add more partners so our services can be expanded? I'm just going to give you a short example here. Last week I met with our public transportation group because we're finding folks are having difficulty with transportation in our community to get to our, for example, any place, but especially from the library standpoint. So how can we meet people where they're at to get them transported here and then use our resources and come to our programs? So we're probably going to be starting to give out travel vouchers at the library, so then that way we can help folks not worry about payment to come to these programs as well. So those are my 3 steps. I wanted to keep it as short as possible because I don't think something like this is cumbersome. It's too difficult. So this is very small, but my partnership list, this is specific to the community dialogue, and I'm not going to go ahead and read all of these. I'll just highlight some of them. Definitely we found folks from the state library. We wanted that representation. We wanted our school system involved especially in elementary, middle, and high school. We wanted as much as possible. We looked at early childhood agencies that were part of this, but as you can also see, there was the Scenic Valley Railroad. We are definitely a town that is known for trains, and so trains can go in the direction of STEM as engineering. And we are looking at creating a new program called STEAM. We are going to add the A for that one, but it is a train station, so we wanted the alliteration. Toot toot. No, I won't go down that. There's your sound effect for today. But we have somebody noted public television. We want to have a platform on public television that would help us get our name out there statewide and gain more partnerships related to STEM. We do have a university close by, Iowa State University, which is noted for its engineering. We have a gentleman that was a former flight director at Johnson Space Center. And then we also had our library director and library board. I felt that was significant for that representation. But the last one I wanted to highlight for this current community dialogue that I did is the council members. To be quite honest, at the time that we were doing this community dialogue, our library yet again was on the chopping block and did get a significant cut in our budget. And we have a very strong connection to our patrons, and they support us. Our council is pretty tricky, and so I wanted to invite council members. And so the two individuals that did show up are already library users and library supporters. So they were able to bring that information, I believe, back to the council, which is really great. And I'm going to talk about some of my pitfalls. I'm proud of this partnership list. I'm proud that everybody came out, but there were some pitfalls with who I didn't invite, and that will come later because I'm hoping to do a second community dialogue. But I will say that although there's 20 that came, I invited probably 40 to not a terrible number for a turnout. And this just goes over the professional areas from STEM to NASA to the library world. I forgot to mention homeschool, which was important. But that's a photo, the awesome photo that I took with my cell phone. I wanted a visual representation of partners. I think quantitative data is so important, but I feel that there's so much power in adding a mixed methodology, that being qualitative as well. And so visualizing and seeing the partners and using that in your marketing is huge, and also using that in presentations, especially for those who are seeking, you want funding from, or your city council, having that conversation and being able to say, look, these are our people that currently support us. We want you to be on that list as well. So I think that helps. So the power of communication, I tell you what, as a children's librarian, I believe that literacy is definitely a goal here, but engagement is, to me, the first priority, and having active communication with folks to help them get engaged, whether it be in the community dialogue or in your library, is a top priority. So key to success number one was not to narrow your decision and who to invite. As Ann mentioned, if it's a sandwich guy down the street, let it be, because you never know what perspectives, what experiences, and what stories people can bring to the table, whether it be relevant to the topic at hand or relevant to their library experience. It just adds more flavor and support to the conversation. So the key to success number two, I'm not going to lie, I don't like to be told no at all. I'm a very persistent person, but it's an expectation to expect some no's or to expect some unanswered emails. I got a couple emails actually that were confused why we were inviting them. We have no relevance to STEM, and having a conversation that we're not looking for STEM only, we're looking to broaden our reach. Not everybody quite understood or didn't have time. So I had to let that one go, even though I was like, you know, you got to understand this, but it's okay. So key to success number 3, I know that we're busy, and I know that there are libraries much smaller than me that are participating, but I really believe that in creating a partnership, it's a matter of inviting them in, sometimes starting with the phone and the email, but then setting up a time to say, I want to give you a tour of our library, I want to meet face-to-face, I want you to know who our staff is, I want you to know the resources are available, and I want you to see who our patrons are. So I think I just did it today, 20, 25 minutes, and within that time we have a new partner, we have new programs coming. It does not take that long to do this, and it's a win-win for everybody. And then key to success number 4 is to send out a community dialogue packet, and I put in parentheses that I can email that out if requested. So professionals coming are busy. We only had 2 hours, and so I gave this packet out 2 to 3 weeks beforehand. Yes, my concern was that folks were going to write and be robotic and read their answers, and I can tell you that just didn't happen. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit more in just a second about that packet of information and how it turned out, you know, how we used it as well. So those are my 4 key areas of success for communication relating to this specific community dialogue. And so this is just a success. Questions navigated the dialogue, but the conversation was organic. So in the packet, we laid out the questions. A lot of them, I used that community dialogue resource, but it's truly important that you make the questions relevant to your library, your community, so that way it has more of a focal point, as Ann said, but organic. It started off, even though we're all professionals and we have enthusiasm and wonder, but we're all new to the circle. So it was slow going, but then it became organic. And so I'm going to get to my idea for what I could have done to start it off in just a second. A strong note taker. I don't take notes very well at all. I love to talk, and I usually record my conversations. I have a director that could be a court reporter because she is so verbatim of what she's hearing, and it made such a difference in the end when I had to write it all up. We randomly chose seats for partners. I didn't want to group them based upon, this is your arena, this is your arena. No, let's sprinkle it in. 1, it helps people get to know other folks, and 2, it doesn't segment people off. It allows more of a comfortable environment, conversation environment. And then giving time to share their own experiences. I know time is of the essence, but if people want to share their experiences related to STEM or who they've served or whatever, it provides a great visualization and also adds more essence to the conversation. And it can allow the conversation to go in a new direction. And so that's my other important point. The questions are available as a tool, but if all of a sudden the conversation trails off and it's valuable to have that conversation, just let it happen organically. And then answers help us decide to have future dialogue. So that is, Paul, that's something I'm going to email you and Ann as well on, just because I want to have another community dialogue. I want to have more. But I want to know how we're going to go about doing that, what our focus area is going to be. We did get a visit. Well, didn't. I requested it from the governor and the lieutenant governor. And that's what I mean by go big or go home. That's not a requirement. It doesn't mean that if your governor doesn't show up that they don't, that they don't appreciate what you're doing. They just are busy. But I kind of was really persistent and probably called her office maybe 5 times. Because in our state, STEM is huge. And it was a great platform for her and a great platform for us. And so she not only talked about STEM, but talked about libraries being a key to the success of STEM programs and just the success of community. So we were very excited when that happened. And then I put the last thing as food. It was so important. We got a local grocery store. They donated all the food for us, except they forgot napkins and plates, but that's okay. I am a children's librarian, so there are supplies everywhere. So they provided all the food, and it just helped to have some sustenance available. Pitfalls. Biggest one is not enough time. 2 hours for us was short, but I wanted people to know that we weren't going to take their entire or even a half day. So we're looking at ways to expand that and maybe doing a 4-hour or a 3-hour. We just need to think through the logistics of that. Here's the deal. I didn't think of this, and I wish I had. Somebody asked, why don't we have parents here? Why don't we have students? That makes perfect sense to me because although I want all the programs, I'm thinking about all these programs. There's so many neat ideas out there. The conversation needs to be to our consumers, to our patrons. Is this working for you? Is this something you want? And not just that, what do you want? I think that helps us have relevancy in our programs and allows people to say, they're listening to me. That's what we need right now. And then introductions were too short. I got to know the names and the agencies, who these folks were, but I think we needed more time to just have more of an introduction and maybe have time to share those experiences and what communities are at the table, because it wasn't just Boone. There was a community at the table that has close to 100,000 people that they're serving. What does that look like? And can community libraries, younger, smaller libraries help large system libraries, vice versa? So just make sure there's okay. So that in a nutshell is my community dialogue. I feel that was very successful, and the good news is these partners and I it's been since February. We have had multiple conversations since then, and that's important. Even though this is a requirement and we're done with it right now, we want it to continue. We want the conversation to move forward. So please let me know if you have any questions. I know you guys have more, presentation going forward, and I'll stay on if anybody has any questions. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Zach, so much. That's amazing. Yeah. I know you had given me a little written report, but I learned so much more from this. I especially like the, in your pitfall area, the idea of inviting parents and students. I'll tell you guys, when you're reading the guide, I talk a lot about inviting community leaders and the change makers, but there's nothing that says a third grader can't be a change maker, right? So I really like the idea of recognizing that you don't have to be a business owner to be the person making that change. So Kelly, I think you can probably hang up on Zach unless Zach has anything else to say.
No, that's okay. Hang up on me, but I'll still be online, okay? Thank you.
That sounds good. See you later, Zach.
All right, bye-bye.
Oh, Jamie got a good picture of me holding Zach up there. My hand is asleep. So it worked. It totally worked. Yay. So we're probably going to go just a few minutes over here, guys, just to give you fair warning since we got started a little late. So I am not actually going to go through all of the slides I have here at the end. These slides are more resources and how you guys can learn more about the dialogues, but I have a couple slides of wonderful quotes. These will be posted on the website, and Brooks will send you out the link to those, so please don't feel like you need to screenshot or anything. You'll have access to these quotes later, and I think the quotes are really important. When you're sending out that packet that Zach was talking about to potential participants, if you can show them how these dialogues have impacted other communities, they're a lot more likely to come. This is something, unfortunately, our first libraries didn't have access to because 30 people hadn't done dialogues yet. But now we have these great kind of testimonials, and I think they're a really great resource. So there's some good pictures in here, too, of some of them. I really liked This quote here at the bottom, this dialogue was very useful in setting up collaborations. The attendees weren't as keen on discussing issues as they were on talking and working together, which is great. If you just want to move right into implementation and fix all the problems in your community, that's our end goal anyway. It's to point out how flexible these things are. The dialogue Zach had is nothing like any of the dialogues I've been to and nothing like the dialogue Kellyanne went to. They're all so different. It's just talking is what's important. I think I have one more of these. Oh yeah, this is a good one from Charles. Participants took off running. I was barely able to get questions in, but it was all good because by themselves they covered most of the questions. So that's the thing. We provide, and I know Eric's like waiting with bated breath because I keep telling him the link is coming up. We provide a list of potential questions, but if those don't jive with you, if you're like, yeah, no, I'm not asking that, make up your own. But know that the participants are going to head that route anyway once they know what you want to talk about. Atlas, who is also one of our Nessa at My Library librarians from Gwinnett, I think I saw her on the line actually. She talked again about fluid conversations, participants getting encouraged to gather together. So it wasn't, a lecture hall, but more of a, it's a study group, right? We're working together. I'm going to put that in the next version of the guide. Study group. So some suggestions from our libraries who have already done these dialogues. Zach talked about a lot of this, so I'll go quick. One is plan ahead. If you think that a month or 2 months is enough time to get new friends, new partnerships, to talk to that state librarian and make sure that this fits on your schedule, that's not going to work. One of these that I did in Driggs, Idaho in preparation for the eclipse, we did have 3 months. The state librarian was already booked. She was so sad that she couldn't come. But they've since met up, so that's great. But, plan ahead. If you've got your 3 key people you want to show up, figure out their schedule first, and then start planning around that. And again, we mentioned this earlier, invite the people you're wanting to serve. Don't talk about people. It's not about programming at a target audience. It's about involving them in the process. If your conversation is, yes, I think our local tribe would really like, rather than the conversation being, hello, member of the local tribe, what would you really like? Then that's problematic. You want to have them tell you what they want, not your interpretation of it. Also something we've heard a bit from some of our NASA partners, which I hadn't considered to begin with, is considering a neutral location. Especially if you're trying to bring in some underserved groups or geographically dispersed groups that might not feel comfortable at your library yet, meet them somewhere else. Go have a 5-person dialogue wherever you need to be to have that conversation, and then maybe they'll come to your next big one. Don't, again, feel like this has to be what our examples were. Remember your role in these dialogues. Again, I've fallen prey to this one too. You're a convener, and if needed, a facilitator. You don't need to run the meeting. If you aren't the type of person that can go to this without running it, hand the clicker or the mic or whatever to somebody else, and you sit back and be the note taker. Just because you called this meeting does not mean that you have to be the one marching people on to the next question. Let somebody else do that if you feel like you're going to have a hard time piping down. That's definitely something I've had to do at some of the dialogues. Here, somebody else do this. And then, again, we've talked about this a billion times now. Make it fun. Have a party. Have snacks. Do some activities. Make it show and tell, right? One of the ones I did for the NASA project, people brought in some meteorites because they knew that we were talking about NASA. So, do whatever you need to make it fun for everybody. All right, so now the good stuff, how you can conduct a dialogue, and yes, you really should all conduct a dialogue. We just now, today, this morning, maybe even this afternoon, published this page on the StarNet Library's website. So this is our community dialogue page. It has all of the stuff you might need to conduct a dialogue. Now, at first glance, it is definitely a little daunting. You look at this and say, oh my gosh, there's the planning and the hosting, and what do I do after, and references? Oh God, is this a paper in college? There is a lot of stuff there because some people, people like me, people like Zach, want all of that information. If you just want to see an outline of what this looks like, great. Just go to the outline and do what works for you. We just didn't want to not have enough stuff, so don't feel like you need to kind of go through every last thing on here to have a successful dialogue. So that's absolutely not true. So this is kind of the home page. Again, we've broken it up into some categories. So what the heck's a dialogue? What should my timeline be for planning? Oh, was my arrow not actually doing anything?
I can see Anne's arrow. Now you can see the green one.
Yay! What's it look like when I'm hosting one of these things? How do I follow up with people? Did Annie and Kellyann write me any documents that might be helpful? Yes, we did. And then also really helpful is this last category, the appendices. I know the appendices is normally the stuff no one wants to go look at. This is the good stuff. This has a nice description of StarNet, so you can talk about all the federally funded programs encouraging you to do this. It has a really nice template letter. Zach was talking about sending a letter out to potential participants, and we have a template for you that you can just put your information in and send out. So definitely, if you're the person who doesn't want to go through the whole site, definitely go to the appendices, because that'll give you some easy fill-in-the-blank stuff for you to make your dialogue a little easier on you. I just opened up one of the sections to give you, again, another idea of what it looks like in this dialogue document. I did also want to point out any pictures you see in the document, or, in the website or in the document, you feel free to use those for your own purposes, appropriately, obviously, to promote the dialogue. They all have the proper attribution on them, so you should be able to pull the attribution if you want to use them. If you don't see it, just email me and I'll let you know who you need to attribute there. But we got a lot of really great pictures of people having these conversations and having meaningful conversations and discussions. And if that's going to help you make the case to, your state librarian or the state senator, whoever you want to come, that's great. Go ahead and do that. The resources on here too, again, feels like school for a second, but this is really important. So this resource list kind of shows some of, if you want to hear more about like our Discover Health program or results from some of our NASA at My Library pilots who conducted dialogues, that's where this is all going to live. There's also a link to an ALA program I'm sure most of you are familiar with called Transforming Communities. This program and Transforming Communities kind of came into existence at the same time. Obviously, there must have been a need for it because we do see a lot of overlap between the two programs. Really, I think the big difference is we focus a lot on community leaders and change makers, and Transforming Communities focuses a lot on the current patron level. I think those are both great directions, and if you want to include them both in the dialogue, that's fine. But some good reading material about that initiative too, because we do think it's a great program. And lastly, Eric, you've waited till the very last slide for this. These are all the links where you can find all these brand new resources for you. So the first one is our community dialogue page on the StarNet Library's website. It's under our resources tab. Our website, Johnny says he can't get elected officials to respond to emails for community invites. What I would recommend doing, and what we've actually done here a few times, if their office is near you, walk into their office. You're certainly not going to talk to that elected official, but you're going to talk to their secretary. You're going to give her a shirt or a bag with the library's name on it, and she's going to make sure that you get her the next time. So yeah, you have to, this is why I talk about, start planning 4 or 6 months out. You might need to do some footwork on the ground to get people to respond. And if they don't, again, that's okay. You've tried, and that's more than we've done before, right? The next link up here is the actual community dialogue guide. So this is a guide that we put together first with Education Development Center and Jen Jose. We made one of these guides for our NASA at My Library partners. We've modified this document so that it's more relevant for a general audience. So people who don't know what NASA at My Library is, this guide will make perfect sense to you. And feel free to download that, and again, copy, paste, use anything in that guide to help you. All I ask is that you let me know after you've done that and how successful your dialogue is, so that I can tell other people about how great this program is. And if you have more questions, I could talk about this literally all day. You don't want me to do that, though. So if you have specific questions, you can go ahead and drop me an email, and I'm more than happy to answer. I'm almost done writing a paper that's going to go in, oh gosh, Library Monthly. I just that might go in it. Totally forgot the name of the journal all of a sudden. But maybe you'll have more to read about soon as well. But again, we're very proud of this program. We think that it's really relevant to libraries, especially right now. with some of the issues that libraries in their communities are facing around social justice and inclusion and those kinds of issues. And this is, we hope, a really good way to start making some headway on those. So Kelly, I'm going to ask you to go ahead and post our last poll. While you guys are responding to the poll question, if you have any last-minute questions down in the comments, I know we've run over. I do appreciate everybody sticking around. That's right. Paul says elected official staff are the gatekeepers. That's absolutely right. And they like tote bags. So the question there is, if you're interested in conducting a dialogue, I've just assumed now that you are, would testimonials or case studies help you make your case to the community? So the idea is a one-pager with Zach's description and some pictures of what happened in his dialogue, but we have 10 of those, so you can see, oh, this library is more my size, or this library has a similar community to me. So it looks like a couple of people said, yes, the more the better. More of you have said yes, but I'd prefer just a 1 or 2 page document. That was probably the route we were thinking about going anyway, so that you could at a glance, maybe a sentence description, and then you can find the one that's most relevant to you. I love that some of you think you can make the case without it. I bet one of those votes is Zach. So we have kept you guys over. I do appreciate you coming to this. This is definitely a different type of webinar than we normally do. This was a lot of talking, and I appreciate you listening. Brooks will be back soon with your next really fun hands-on webinar, more what you're used to. But I do think it's worth noting that while all those hands-on things are great and we know your programs are awesome, the community dialogue is a really great way to get new people into those programs. So we hope that you guys can continue to focus on both. Paul says, ALA's Libraries Transforming Communities is an excellent program that focuses on big community needs such as homelessness, drug abuse, dropout from school. Yeah, so they're really looking at a lot of those big picture issues that might prevent people from doing some of the fun stuff happening at your library. Well, excellent, guys. We really, oh, great. Elena's sending out invites. We really appreciate having this conversation with you all, and we hope it continues. And please do check out that website to learn more about all the great resources we developed for you.
And a big round of applause, I think, for everyone, for Zach. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Zach.
You're an inspiration for us.
Thank you, Jamie, for the phone idea. All right, bye, guys.